Exodus is apocalyptic literature? I'm wrong.
Historical fiction would be more accurate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
When was the literary style of historical fiction invented?
Just saying.
When was it invented?
The term itself probably really...
When was the literary style of historical fiction invented? When did it begin?
The term? To classify that?
The literary style.
This is Cliffe versus Atheist. Make sure to like and subscribe.
Ago you said that the fact that an atheist does not believe in God does not change the fact that God exists. Correct?
Exactly.
But a point I would bring up is that God exists to you because the way you perceive reality is that you believe in him. An atheist is an atheist because the way he perceives reality, God does not exist. So for each individual person, their own reality of what they perceive around them is what is for them. So for you to say that God exists, even if an atheist thinks he doesn't, is purely your viewpoint, not his, and not his reality. On that same token, saying that God, as your concept of him, is real, and saying that, say, the Aztec gods were not real because they sacrificed thousands of people to them is a total fallacy. Because those people's gods were just as real to them as yours is to you. And even if their gods drove them to murder thousands of people, they saw that as right, and people willingly died and gave their own lives for their gods. So what you perceive as God is totally individual. So how can you say that God exists for an atheist when in actuality it doesn't?
Great question. If I believe that this man is a bad dream that I'm having right now, does that change the fact that he's sitting here?
Well, I don't think you can cross-reference someone who's obviously there to something you believe, which you've never actually perceived.
No. You're making a fundamental statement about reality. What I heard you say was, reality is something that we construct in our mind. So if in my mind I construct, this gentleman is a bad dream I'm having right now, does that change the fact that he's sitting here?
Well, obviously not.
All right, then please be very cautious when you think reality is simply something I create in my mind. I don't agree with that.
Why?
Because I think that I can misconstrue reality. I think I can make mistakes. And if I think he's just a bad dream I'm having, I am sadly mistaken. Or if I think the earth is flat and not round, I am sadly mistaken. Or if I think that up is down or down is up, I'm sadly mistaken.
Right, but it's still all perception because the atheist is still going to perceive that God is not there, even if you think he is. So how does that prove your point by making that example?
Well, let's say that the doctor tells me that I have cancer, and I look back the doctor in the face and say, no, that's your perception. I know that I don't have cancer. That doesn't change the fact that in reality I do have cancer. Similarly, just because I say God exists doesn't mean God exists. Just because I say God doesn't exist doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. In other words, God's existence does not depend upon my perspective, and his existence does not depend upon my perspective either. He exists separate from my perspective, and if God exists separate from my perspective. Which means the challenge for me is to find out, is he really sitting there or not? Similarly, the challenge for me is to figure out, does God really exist or does God not exist? Right?
Right, but why have you figured out that he exists?
Okay, good. I'm standing here saying the reason that I believe God exists is because the evidence of the order and the design of the cosmos clearly points to some type of intelligent mind. The evidence that life comes from life does not come from non-life, points to a living, intelligent mind existing. The evidence of moral absolutes convinces me that there's some type of creator who created and defined justice, love, compassion. There's more to reality than matter and energy.
Yeah, but your perception that life comes from not life, see...
No, life comes from life.
I'm sorry, well, correct. Your perception is that life comes from life and life does not come from not life. But that is based on your belief that God created the first life.
No, it's not based on that.
Well,
it has nothing to do with that. My belief that life comes from life has to do with figuring out where little babies come from, figuring out where little rabbits come from, figuring out how to get a baby colt if you want a baby colt. You bring a male and a female horse together. You don't bring two rocks together and get a baby horse out of that. My experience in this life is life comes from life. You never get a baby human being coming from non-life. Life comes from life. Plant life comes from plant life. It doesn't come from inanimate matter. Therefore, is it more plausible for me to believe in the beginning God, or is it more reasonable to believe in the beginning hydrogen? Because my experience tells me life comes from life, it's more reasonable, it's more plausible for me to believe in the beginning God, not beginning hydrogen. You follow that?
Well, I follow that, but I disagree with your example for the reason that several scientists conducted an experiment where inorganic matter in compounds, I don't remember the exact ones because I'm not an expert on it, were taken, and under pressure and heat and what have you, those compounds did form what would be the building blocks of life. And this happened very shortly. So non-life created life to begin with.
Oh, no. Oh, no, no. What happened was intelligent mind took some matter and energy and put it together in such a way that life comes about. Very good. That's exactly what I believe. Intelligent mind, God, brought about life.
Yeah, but that argument's the same as God existing, not existing, because that's what you believe and I believe the other.
No. You don't have life coming about by chance.
Why?
You've got, because your example was some scientists in Chicago set up a situation in which they produced something that we think might have been life, and it's not clear at all either. That's a very questionable experiment, highly questionable. Even if they pulled it off, the point is, intelligent mind organizes chemicals in such a way that life comes about. Yeah, that's what I believe. Intelligent mind, God, organizes things in such a way that life comes about. All I'm saying is take 10 pennies, number them 1 to 10, drop them in your right pocket, pull them out sequentially. I'm not going to stand around holding my breath waiting for you to do it. You're asking me to believe something even more incredible. You're asking me to believe that by chance, by accident, the human eye, central nervous system came together. I can't swallow that. Is that more reasonable? Or is it more reasonable to believe behind order and design, there's got to be an intelligent mind? Gosh, isn't it incredible the way the bricks fell together there? It's amazing. And the way the wood just fell into place, and the little glass up there in those windows. Man, I mean, it just came together. Rubbish. Order and design clearly point me to a builder, an architect, not an explosion in a brickyard. Man, let's go to Mount Rushmore. Oh, yes. Man, isn't it incredible, the water go dripping down those rocks. Just carve out Washington, Lincoln, Jefferson, and Roosevelt. Incredible accident.
But Cliff?
That doesn't back up my experience in life.
A man named Jesus Christ did exist, yes. But the evidence does not state that he was the Christ that you say he is, any more than the evidence states that if I were to die for you, I would be the Christ.
Okay, the evidence that points to Jesus being the truth is his sinless life, his tremendous ethical teachings, his death where, nailed to a wooden crossbeam, instead of cursing his enemies the way I probably would have, he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But fourthly, and most importantly, 3 days after he died, he physically, bodily rose from the dead. And over a period of 40 days, he appeared to over 500 people who saw him risen from the dead. That's why I trust Jesus. I can't prove him, you're absolutely correct, I can't prove him. But the overwhelming evidence is Jesus Christ is reliable. That's why I take a step of faith and trust in him. Now, would you
Why?
give me an
Because
option?
he's reliable?
Pardon?
Because he's reliable?
Yes. I trust people who are reliable, who give me evidence that they're credible and reliable. And the reason that I trust Jesus Christ is because the overwhelming evidence is he is reliable in a way that none of the options are. Give me a better option for my faith than Jesus.
you want to have eternal happiness,
Yeah,
there's no more sure way in your mind. You're as sure as anyone can be
right.
until you actually die and experience.
That's right. I can't prove that I'm going to heaven. I'm convinced I'm going to heaven because Jesus promised eternal life to everyone who trusts in him, and the evidence is Jesus doesn't lie. The evidence is Jesus said, I'm going to die and rise from the dead. And the historical evidence is he pulled it off. Ma'am, I can promise you, if you die and rise from the dead, I will listen very, very carefully to everything you have to say. Why? Because the evidence is you are amazingly reliable.
So, does everyone listen to everything Lazarus said?
Well, Lazarus didn't raise himself from the dead. It was Jesus who raised Lazarus from the dead. And yes, Lazarus put his faith in Christ. And when Thomas saw Jesus risen from the dead, Thomas hit the floor and said, my Lord and my God. Why? Because the evidence was Jesus is reliable. He was dead. He's risen from the dead.
So basically you're saying like mass hallucination.
No. The resurrection appearances of Christ, when you read the Gospels, are clearly not mass hallucinations. In Luke chapter 24, when Jesus appears risen from the dead to his apostles, they think we're hallucinating. And Jesus walks right up to them and says, grab hold of me and see. A spirit does not have flesh and bone the way you see I have. Give me some food to eat it. And so he ate food in front of them. So he was dealing with that precise, excellent question you're raising. Hey, it's all hallucination. And Jesus says, no, it's really me. I have really risen from the dead.
I don't really know. I haven't studied the Bible or anything that much, but I believe he probably was a great man that touched obviously thousands and thousands of people in a very profound way. Now, whether he was the Son of God and whether he actually was resurrected and this and that, I have no idea. I would, if I was to guess, I would say no, just because of my secular beliefs, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, why do you hold secular beliefs?
Why do I hold secular beliefs? Because I've formed them based on everything that I've been able to take in my short 23 years.
What is love according to your secular beliefs?
Well, to be consistent, I have a very difficult time defining that too. It's a feeling, and it can be different for a lot of people. Love for one person can be totally different than love for another person. So,
but if your secular view is right, then love is simply a biochemical reaction, maybe very complex, but if there is no supernatural God, then love is simply a biochemical reaction.
I think I could simplify it to that. I could agree with that.
So, when she looks you in the face and says, I love you, you understand what that means is there are some biochemical reactions going off in my body, and I use the word love to describe these biochemical reactions. That's all it is.
Body and mind and, and my future plans for you and all those things compiled for this word that we've chosen, yeah.
Uh-huh. In fact, if you keep on thinking about it, you begin to realize we don't have free will. Free will is an illusion if your secular worldview is right. Because free will implies that I have a personality, a will that goes beyond the biochemical reactions. There's actually an I. But if we embrace the secular worldview, we understand, no, there's no I. There's simply complex biochemical reactions. I am a machine. Complex as all get out, but I'm just a machine.
It's something but I think just because there's something that we can't explain, it doesn't mean you have to go to a default explanation such as God or whatever your default explanation for that thing is. I can't explain it, but that doesn't mean that your explanation is correct either.
Yeah, but the pickle that you're in is you have already reduced reality with your secular worldview. Your secular worldview has crossed off God, and you've said everything's matter and energy. Fine. You've done the reductionism, not me. Now, if what you say is true, that everything is matter and energy, then there is no I, there's no me that goes beyond the complex biochemical reactions.
I agree.
And everything that this body does is simply a result of the complex biochemical reactions programming me a certain way.
Yeah.
Therefore, If I go up and kick him in the jaw, and you ask me, why did you do it? And I say, because I had to do it. My biochemical reactions programmed me to go up and kick him in the jaw. What do you say to me?
You should get a better hold of your complex biochemical reactions.
But there's no me to get a hold of the
I know,
complex
I know,
biochemical reactions. Because remember, you have reduced me to simply biochemical reactions.
No, I haven't reduced it. I think there is an I. I just can't explain the I to you. But just because I can't explain the I to you, doesn't mean that I agree with your personal concept of the I either. So
Yes,
I think there is an I that controlled that kick. It's just I'm not wise enough to explain that I to you, neither scientifically or philosophically.
Yes, but the problem is the secularist has already limited reality to matter and energy.
Well, this particular secularist hasn't. I think there is more to that I, and I just think I just can't explain it, nor can I explain it through any particular religion at this point.
Well, sir, my point is simple. The only way there can be an I, a free will, is if there is something more to me than simple matter and energy.
Okay.
There's got to be some type of soul, some type of personality, some type of individuality. And the only way that can exist is if there's more to reality than matter and energy. And secularism limits reality to matter and energy. That's the whole point of evolution as an origin. The whole point of evolution as an origin is there is no God. We're just matter and energy evolved to a higher order. The problem is your experience of love, your experience of free will, your experience of moral absolutes violates that worldview so violently.
How much sense does it make that all these supernatural miracles and stuff happened, and they happened in the flesh in the first century, but they haven't happened since, and they haven't
How do you
happened
know?
before. They haven't happened before, they haven't happened since, but during
Well, how
this
do you
little
know
time,
that?
there was super.
I'm saying, how do
No,
you
I'm
know?
not gonna try
I
to.
don't know. This man's making a categorical, absolute statement. These miracles didn't happen
No,
before,
I just
and they didn't
asked you
happen
a
after.
question. I actually framed it as a question,
Oh,
and I
you
asked
did?
you,
All
how
right.
much sense does it make to you that all these supernatural miracles happened in the span of 100 years?
Yeah, and then you, come on, be honest, man. And then you said
so-
they haven't happened since.
They haven't.
How much sense does it make? Come on, be honest.
Right.
That's what you said. And my
Hey,
point is,
definitely, man.
I'm not so sure that they haven't happened since.
I'm not so sure they didn't happen then, but I've never witnessed it myself.
Neither have I. I've
Yeah.
never seen anybody walk on water, and I've never seen anybody risen from the dead.
And my experience in this world has been one of order, and one that is dictated by strict natural laws, ones that can't be betrayed, like the law of gravity. I'm not going to jump off that building.
I'm glad to hear that.
Okay. I'm not one to believe in events, contradicting these natural laws, because I think they're designed for a purpose. They're designed by a guiding force that doesn't want me to jump off of that building. He wants me to obey the laws of nature and obey the natural order of things.
Good.
And I just think that we're misconstruing this message, and over the course of the years and the centuries, this interpretation has become one of a factual nature, one that says this is factually true, instead of looking at it for its beauty and its value as mythology. And mythology is not, I don't use that negatively, it's not a negative connotation,
Right.
but given the backdrop of mythology in the classical world, the Bible, it fits very well into that as a natural outflow of a people who used mythology. The ancient Hebrew scripture is full of great images and a lot of analogy.
Apocalyptic literature
Yeah, not just apocalyptic.
called Hebrew poetry in the Psalms.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example. I was thinking.
Moses was not a myth, though. Neither was Joshua.
Moses wasn't a myth, but
Neither was Isaiah.
Moses wasn't a myth, but parting the Red Sea is a myth.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How do you know that?
because it doesn't make any sense.
That's right. It contradicts your philosophical presupposition that there's no supernatural God who performs miracle in history. And that's your presupposition, and therefore,
But I'm not saying
obviously,
the
Red Sea was
story
not
is
parted.
without value. The story's not.
Well, great. I think that's wonderful of you.
It's got
to grant
value.
it value as a myth. But unfortunately, in the Old Testament, in Exodus, it is not communicated as myth. The parting of the Red Sea is communicated as an historical fact, the work of a supernatural God who does intervene in human history.
How does, when you said it communicates that, I mean, communicates that to you? As
No,
an
no, no,
interpret-
no, no.
As
Exodus is not a poem. Exodus is not apocalyptic literature. It's not symbolic literature. Exodus is historical narrative. Except it also contains didactic literature, like 20, where
this is your interpretation that it is
No,
historical.
study it yourself. Don't take it from me. Study the Hebrew. If you find that Exodus is poetry,
It would be-
I'm wrong.
It'd be best
If
characterized.
you find that Exodus is apocalyptic literature, I'm wrong.
Historical fiction would be more accurate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
When was the literary style of historical fiction invented?
I'm just saying,
When was it invented?
the term itself probably really.
When was the literary style of historical fiction invented? When did it begin?
The term to classify that?
The
that genre?
literary style.
The style was probably as old as man himself.
No.
Yeah.
No, sir.
But
There was epic poem.
But the nomenclature is
There was
probably
no
20th century.
historical fiction until hundreds of years after the New Testament was written. It was not a known literary style. Therefore, what you're positing is that a few isolated Hebrews used a literary style called historical fiction with no
Historical-
known predecessor,
no, historical
no known
fiction.
immediate successor for hundreds of years.
Historical
Fine,
fiction.
if you want to believe that, go ahead, but I can't.
Historical fiction with a mythological bent.
No, mythology was around, but not historical fiction, meaning by that historical narrative that was fiction. That literary style did not come about till a few hundred years after the Gospels were written. But
Well, I
you want to
don't-
believe that it's all historical fiction, fine.
I don't know, but that's the way I characterize it. I don't know that for sure, but I don't know. I'm pretty much done.
It's still like an oral. It still comes from an
Thank
oral.
you so much for dialogue, and I appreciate it a lot.
Actually, I want to be done too.
All right, thanks for dialogue,
All right,
and I
thanks.
appreciate it.